All right, welcome back to Metflex and Chill. This is Rachel Gregory, your host, and today's episode is with another one of my Metflex tribe members. So if you haven't checked out the episode with Kristen Andell, I forgot what episode it is, but she was the first of my Metflex tribe members to come on the show and tell us her story, basically her journey going through keto and the Keto For Women program and where she's at now, thriving as, like I like to say, a metabolically flexible badass. And on today's episode, we have another member of the Metflex tribe, Rachel Bush. So again, if you're not familiar with the Metflex tribe, it's basically the women who have gone through my Keto For Women program, which is a 3-month program that is specifically for women who have gone through either a period of following a ketogenic diet, or they've done it for years and maybe have hit a plateau or whatever it may be, or women who are just interested in learning more about keto and working with me on a more kind of one-on-one and group basis. So with that being said, actually the third round of the Keto For Women program is going to be starting this fall. I'm not sure yet on the exact date, but I will be putting that out in probably the next two to 3 weeks. It should be starting at the end of August, beginning of September. Again, I don't know an exact date, but I will be announcing that. So if you're interested in joining the Keto For Women program, I will link the link to sign up in the show notes. You can swipe up if you're listening to this on iTunes and view the show notes, or you can just go to my website, killinitketo.com. And then you'll just tap on my program, you'll press the program buttons at the top and you should be able to find the Keto For Women program and you can sign up for the waiting list. So again, I will announce the start date, and if you are on the waiting list, you will get an email from me. So definitely, if you're not on that list, if you haven't signed up yet, definitely do that if you're interested. All of the information about the Keto For Women program, as well as previous members who have gone through it, their experiences, their transformations are all on my website. So definitely check that out if you're interested. But let's get into today's episode. So the guest, again, is Rachel Bush, a member of my Metflex tribe. A little information about Rachel. She has been an US Airforce flight attendant for the last 15 years, which is so cool. She currently lives and works in the Washington, D.C. area and has also lived in Honolulu, Hawaii. Jealous. While in Hawaii, she completed an executive chef certification through the American Culinary Federation, a registered yoga teacher certification through Yoga Alliance, and a personal trainer certification through the American Council on Exercise. So Rachel has a really amazing background in nutrition and exercise herself. And when not traveling as a flight attendant with the U.S. Vice President or Secretary of State, she teaches yoga to fellow Air Force members struggling with military fitness standards and runs a small private accountability and coaching group. In her free time, Rachel enjoys movies, meditation, cooking, walking her dog with her boyfriend, and exploring Old Town Alexandria and the many vineyards in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia. I definitely went to vineyards in the Shenandoah Valley. I can't even say that word. I went to JMU, so I'm very familiar with all of the amazing vineyards in Virginia. But yeah, anyway, that's not the point of this episode. But just kind of getting into what we talk about a little bit in today's episode. We talk about really just Rachel's experience with her nutrition in the past and her exercise in the past, and how she kind of came across a low-carb keto diet, what she experienced when she first went on a low-carb keto diet, and kind of her journey throughout that. We also talked about why you may need to alter your approach to keto as you get further along your journey. We talk about all the benefits of incorporating specific tools such as protein-sparing modified fast days, which are things that we go over in the Keto For Women program. We talk about how to use tracking tools to raise awareness for progress. We talk about the importance of accountability and having a support group as you go through a specific, whether it's a fat loss phase or you're trying to get past the plateau, or you're trying to just improve different areas of your life. So yeah, we just kind of dive into Rachel's journey, and really her experience with the Keto For Women program, how it changed her life, and how she is thriving now as a metabolically flexible badass. So let's dive into the episode with Rachel Bush. All right, welcome back to Metflex and Chill. This is your host, Rachel Gregory, and I have an awesome other Rachel here with me, one of my Metflex Tribe members, Rachel Bush. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited you're here. I'm excited to chat about your story and hopefully learn a little bit more about you as well and your background. So do you want to tell our listeners kind of, I guess, who you are and what you do and how, what all that jazz, just kind of an intro?
Sure. Yeah, super excited to be here, by the way. Thanks for offering to do this and love the podcast. But anyway, I am Rachel Bush. As you mentioned, I've been a flight attendant in the US Airforce for the last 16 years. So I spent a lot of time traveling around and taking our US leaders all over the world so that they can conduct diplomacy, basically. And so we don't just take them where they're going, but we're also more of like a corporate jet versus a commercial jet. So we are also preparing all the food that they eat for the entire time they're on the jet. So we spend a lot of time doing grocery shopping and doing cooking and serving. So that's what I spend a lot of my time doing. And so sometimes because of that, I don't really enjoy doing that at home.
That's awesome. How long have you been doing that for again?
16 years. So
wow.
Yeah, I've been in the Air Force for a little over 19 years and I've been doing this part for about 16.
Wow.
So
that's awesome. So did you go, where did you go to school? I'm just curious.
I started my undergrad at Wright State University and then I quit to join the Air Force and then I finished it up online through American Intercontinental University.
Okay.
But my degree is actually in graphic design.
Oh, wow.
It doesn't have anything to do with it. At the time that I did it, I was, like doing public affairs type of stuff. And I was a journalist for the Air Force. And so that stuff was really interesting to me. And then when I became a flight attendant, I became like a lot more interested in, nutrition and health and wellness. And so then I ended up doing a chef certification. So I did my executive chef certification. I've been certified as a yoga instructor. I'm a certified personal trainer.
Wow.
But for the most part, I don't actually use any of those certifications. I just keep getting recerted. I just keep doing the continuing education credits every other year.
Oh, I didn't know about all those other certifications and all the other stuff that you did. That's awesome. So how long ago did you get did you get this chef certification or started that, I guess?
I actually I feel like I cheated my way through that chef certification because I didn't actually have any formal training other than a week-long course at the CIA for flight attendants and then just everything that I learned on the job. And one of the chefs for one of our generals is actually an ACF judge. And so he had them doing certifications out in Hawaii and he was like, yeah, we're certifying chefs next week. You should come out. And I was like, I do not have the same training that you guys have. And he's like, no, it's cool. Come out. We'll spend a weekend training and then you'll do it. And so we did. We spent like 72 hours straight, basically. Wow. Training. And then I showed up and I certified as an executive chef. I think that was maybe like late 2014.
That's so cool.
Either 2014 or 2015. But then that was a lot. That was really hard. So, and so my grandfather was like, oh, you're a chef now. You can come and cook me something. And I'm like, I have no extra knowledge today than I did yesterday.
That's so funny.
And I apologize to all real chefs out there because I am just a fake chef.
Oh no, I'm sure that's not true. That's so cool though. So what really got you into, so is that when you started to get more into nutrition?
A little bit, yeah. And I always have kind of struggled with weight fluctuations. And I grew up in Ohio where things are not healthy necessarily, especially like small town Ohio, where everything is like mom and pop and everything is deep fried and everything comes on pizza crust. And we do definitely have, sorry, because I know you're from New York, but Ohio actually has the best pizza in the country.
Really?
A lot of Italians immigrated to Ohio back in the day. I don't know how, but that's how my Italian family ended up there.
Is it deep
There's
dish or like?
No, thin crust.
Thin crust.
Extra thin. Yeah.
Might have to go to Ohio and check that out.
Come check it out. So, it's like we grew up definitely eating standard American diet, and I watched my mom struggle through a lot of weight issues, and her fad dieting thing, trickle down effect. Like she, when I was younger, became obsessed with Susan Powder. I don't know if you remember. That was like maybe late 80s. And that was like the beginning of the whole fat is bad. And so, yeah, I definitely grew up eating a lot of junk food, but on this yo-yo roller coaster of like, oh, we can't have any fat in the house, but let's have pizza on Saturday. And I think like we also were pretty like poor growing up. We didn't have a ton of money. So I don't think I ever even ate a fresh vegetable. For the most part, every vegetable came out of a can until I like joined the Air Force, I think. And it was like, I was convinced that I didn't like vegetables at all. And it turns out I just don't like canned vegetables.
I'm pretty sure, I mean, I don't know. I've never met someone who actually likes canned vegetables, but.
Well, my mother loves green beans out of a can. And she like still to this day will buy canned vegetables just because, just to have around just in case.
Yeah.
But
my grandmother had a lot of those actually, but.
So I think, yeah, definitely when I started flying and we started cooking and it was like, oh, I'm getting complimented at this. I think that this is kind of fun. I don't necessarily create recipes. I just find recipes and I am very good at following recipes. But people are like, you're such a good cook. And I'm like, no, I'm really good at reading.
That's funny. That's funny though, also because I'm the opposite. Like I suck at following recipes because I always want to like if I have a recipe, I'm like, oh, I want to make that my own. And then I try all these different things and like half the time nothing ever works. And then there's like that, minuscule time that things work. And I mean, obviously it's like, this is coming from someone who wrote a book that has over 140 recipes in it. I promise you those recipes are actually good. And I took a lot of time on them.
No, I have your book.
Oh, yeah. But there are definitely some times where things don't work out, but I just thought it was funny because I'm like the opposite. I'm not good at following recipes.
Yeah. I'm getting like better at finding recipes and finding ways to adapt them and that's been working out for me. And then it's like, I'll just change one thing and I'm like, oh, it's a new recipe.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that's how most people are, right? Like,
yeah. It's like, but yeah, actually speaking of your cookbook, I really, really enjoy your cookbook and I recommend it to people all the time because the recipes are like usually really easy to follow. But I'm like such a psycho about it. Like no matter how many times I make the same recipe, I still have to go pull your book out and make sure because I'm like psycho OCD about making sure if it says a fourth of a cup, then it is a fourth of a cup.
That's funny. Well, I really appreciate that. Awesome. All right. Well, I want to get into kind of a little bit more of your story and kind of as we're on the subject of nutrition and all of that. Can you, obviously a lot of people listening to this podcast do kind of live the lower carb, keto lifestyle. So how did you initially find like low carb keto?
I think at some point, well, I mean, it was like early after I joined the Air Force, I had kind of tinkered around with like Atkins for a little bit and had some good success on that. But then it was like, it just felt kind of fattish. And then ultimately I ended up going back to kind of like a fat phobic diet. Like I've heard you talk about, you've had that before. I definitely was fat phobic for a really, really long time. And then definitely always looking. I used to say like I was very frugal with my money, but if something promised to make me skinny or make me prettier, like fix my skin, I would shell out any amount of money for it. So I just wasted so much money on all these like prefabbed diets. And then like all of a sudden when I had started kind of leaning towards a lower carb thing, mostly because one of the prefabbed diets was actually just a really clean eating whole food type of diet. And so I was kind of working through that, and I had kind of gone through that whole program, and it worked for me. But then ultimately, like, I still really like pizza and I still love sandwiches. And so, but I always felt kind of bad. I had like started to think that I had like maybe some type of gluten intolerance or gluten allergy, because it just kind of felt sick all the time, and wasn't like smart enough to figure out like, hey, if I just stop eating that, I'll be fine, because it still tasted good. But one of my coworkers actually went keto, and he had like a bunch of success on it. And so, you know, we're trapped in the aircraft for 9 hours at a time, and me and a girlfriend were like, hey, come in here, tell us what you're doing, talk to us about that. And so I literally spent like 3 hours talking about what he had been doing on keto and what had been working for him. And obviously he was like internet educated, so it wasn't necessarily good information, but it was information. And so it was like, you know what, it was just something clicked, and it was like, I feel like I can do this. And I went into it with a mindset of like, this isn't a diet, this is going to be a lifestyle, and that I'm never going to stop doing this. Mm-hmm. And I just started, then when we landed, I just kind of started phasing it in. And I was like, I'm not going to go cold turkey, because, you know, he's already told me that I'm going to get the keto flu and die. So I was like, so, you know, it was like starting. And by the time we got home from that trip, it was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And, you know, like even before I decided to do that, it was like one of my friends was doing one of those like MLM, like multi-level marketing keto companies where you just drink the ketones and you get thin.
Yeah.
And so I was spending a lot of money on that, and not for nothing, like, yeah, it didn't make me lose any weight, but it did make my mind like super ultra clear. And I felt like, you know, in the movie Limitless, when Bradley Cooper takes the pill and then he suddenly knows how to do everything, and he's got all this like energy. Like, I felt like Superman when I was taking those ketones, and I'm like, yeah, I can get behind this. I can drink all night and not have a hangover. I can get up. I'm on the ball. I know I can be 100 different places at once. Mm-hmm. And so, I obviously stopped drinking those, because it's like, well, now I'm eating this way and I feel that way anyway, and I don't need to spend $80 a month to get these packets of ketones.
Yeah.
So that worked out.
And how long ago was that when you started?
I started keto in, I think, March of 2017.
Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay. So I guess what,
so it was kind of interesting.
Sorry, I lost my connection there a little bit. Can you hear me?
Oh, okay. I thought it was my connection, but yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. Sorry. No, you go. I interrupted you.
No, I missed your question because you cut out.
Oh, I was just going to say, so you can continue going from, you know, what you're talking about. So, you know, you stopped taking the ketones and you kind of just continued. Was there any like turning point or anything that, you know, happened between then and I guess the last few years? Or we can talk kind of about, you know, when you came to the Keto For Women program, and between that period, like why, I guess, what was kind of the turning point that made you want to, you know, join the program, or not just the program, but like, was there anything within that period of time that maybe for a lot of people, it's like keto works for a while, and then especially women, it's like, you know, keto works for so long, I feel so good, and then like there's this plateau they hit, or like this kind of sticking point. Did you ever experience that?
Well, I felt like I got to a point where I was just maintaining, and I was super happy with that, because I was at a good, healthy weight, and I was still feeling really good. And then in 2018, we moved from Hawaii to Maryland, and it's always stressful to move, but it's super stressful when you move like halfway around the world. And my boyfriend was like about 5 months behind me. So that was, a stressor. And then he got there and immediately we went on a vacation together to South America. And it was like, oh, we're in vacation mode now. So we're going to, and cause that's what you do. You only live once. When you go to South America, you eat all of the yummy food. And then we came home from that and I immediately had to go to 5 weeks of training for the Air Force in Alabama. So we're separated again. It's a very stressful training. It's like putting a ton of stress on our relationship. And I was like just stress eating everything. I think I went to like the fried chicken place for lunch and dinner for 5 straight weeks. Like I just went completely off the rails. And I was I was just in a really negative headspace, a negative body space, and everything was not good. And even like returning back home after the training, it was like things were still pretty bumpy. Just my job was new and stressful. I went from in Hawaii where I was in charge of like 20 people to this new job in Maryland where I have like 160 people that I'm in charge of. And it was like just super overwhelming. I was stressed out. I feel like, it's a job you don't know, and there's no one really to train you because it's just like, just figure it out. Nobody can tell you how to manage that many people. Everyone has a different way of doing it. And so I was like, I'm failing. This is terrible. And so it was like the whole 2018 was pretty much a wash. And I was like, okay, so kind of like hit rock bottom. I was like, all right, I got to get back into keto. I've been off of it for way too long. And then like January 2019, it was like, okay, this is the New Year's resolution. We're back on track. And so it was like, I was really strict, and Lee even went on keto with me because he had gone out to like metabolic health summit with his parents. And so he came back like, yeah, I want to do this because he has no weight problems. He's like ultra thin, but he wanted to do it just for health and for mental clarity and all of that. And I just, no matter what we did, we were eating clean, we were doing keto, we were counting macros, and I was not losing any weight. It was just everything that had worked the first time that I went on keto no longer worked. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. And I was just getting super stressed out about it. And then Keto for Women showed up and was like, ding. And I had messaged you and I'm like, I don't know if this is right, but this is what's going on. And you were like, that is exactly what the program is for. And I was like, okay. And then like all of it kind of clicked and it all just made sense. And yeah, so glad that I found Keto for Women when I found Keto for Women, because otherwise I would still just be miserable.
Oh. Well, I mean, what you said though is something that I know a lot of people listening probably have gone through. I've gone through it myself too. Like you initially, go keto or whatever, see results, and then like, maybe you go off for a little while and then you're like, all right, I'm just going to jump right back into it. And then what was working the first time around, generally like just from working with people and even for myself, like it's the same thing. Like it's like, oh, well, this worked before, but now it's not working anymore. Like, what do I do now? And it's such a big discouragement because you just don't know where to start. And then you go like searching the internet and Dr. Google and you're like, what do I do? And they have like 10 different opinions from different people or quote unquote experts telling you should be doing this or that or that. And so that's really why like I created the Keto for Women program, because I really wanted to create a program that was based off of kind of all of the things that I had experienced for myself, and also like worked with women specifically who have experienced that too. And there was all these similarities and all these kind of tools and things that had been implemented and had worked. And it really just came back to like the education piece of it as well. So what would you say, I guess just a question for you, like throughout the Keto for Women program, do you feel like there were specific things that you learned or things that you took away that kind of changed your perspective on things or kind of allowed you to get the results you got?
Yeah, there's so much, like the education piece that you mentioned, that was so huge. And like, because I already had like this desire to educate through like yoga, through personal training, through the chef, like everything that I like absorbed, I'm just like so anxious to like also give to other people. And like, I'm really excited. I've even kind of started like my own little like baby accountability group, because that was the one thing I learned through Keto for Women too, is like I literally need somebody holding me accountable. Like I can do all the tracking and whatever, but if I don't have anyone to look over it, then it's just like, well, nobody's looking today.
Yeah.
I'll just so it's like, yeah, we kind of started this group, and you know, we get up and like I'll try to send like a little piece of the puzzle, like as a motivator, you know, like reminder, mindset's super important. So make sure you're giving yourself positive self-talk and things like that. And so it's like, usually they're like, oh my God, thank you.
I love that.
Or I'll be like, reminder, consistency is more important than perfection. You can have one bad day or, you know, one bad meal. So, you know, like just taking all those little nuggets and then being like super excited to not just hold on to them, but then to pass them on. But I think the other thing too is like changing the way that I was tracking metrics. Because I was usually like weighing myself. Like I think normally when people are like, I'm going to do this, I'm going to lose weight, they're like, okay, I'm going to weigh myself every week, and they do that. And I'm going to take my measurements every month, and they do that. But what I learned is like, that's such a partial picture of what's going on. And it wasn't until like going through the Keto for Women and like figuring out why it's important to do those things so much more frequently, that and what it means and how you can determine what the things you're eating and the things you're doing are affecting that on a daily, weekly, monthly average. That really clicked for me. And then, before like, and the other thing I think that was really new to me was really focusing on like the non-exercise activity or getting your steps up. So I had gotten like a step counter or whatever back in Hawaii, and I would look at it, but it would be like, oh, that was what it was today. And there was like no consequence or action associated with it. And so then being like, oh, actually, if I get this many more steps, it means X, Y, and Z. Or if I get 10,000 steps 4 days in a row, I can guarantee that for me, you know, this is what's going to happen to the scale. Or if I get that many steps, but I had one piece of pizza that week, then everything still averages out for me anyway. You know, learning how those things affect the fluctuations. And like most recently, like the mindset thing. And I mean, I think during Keto for Women, there was, you know, we had mindset challenges and things that we did, but I kind of was like only halfway participating in that, because it was like, yeah, I'm into it. It's something that's interesting to me as a yoga instructor, and I enjoy that, but my day is pretty busy and sometimes I can't fit it and whatever. And then it just kind of fell off. But now that we're in the state of the world that we're in today, I've, for the last like few weeks, been able to like really dedicate and carve out time every morning for that. And I think it's making like a big difference already. And then even like going and listening to Kristen on Monday's call with her insights, it was like just adding that extra podcast or that extra information or doing just a little bit more research. And it's like, yeah, that works for me. That makes sense.
That's awesome. Yeah. I mean, I was the same way too with like the mindset stuff. I talk about this all the time, but like I used to never be into any of that, like meditation, any of that stuff. And it's true, like you're like, oh, well, I'm busy doing this, so like I don't want to do that. But then when you kind of get into it, like you're saying, it's like when you kind of put yourself first, right? And you put your needs first, especially like I know like for having a morning routine and things like that, like if you can start your day off that way and like start your day actually with kind of that self-help, like that self-development, I guess you could call it, like it just sets everything up for your day for success, that you can not only, you know, feel good about yourself, but like you bring your best self to everything else that you do, right? And like the people around you and things like that. So, I mean, I notice like when I don't do that stuff, like I'm much more irritable or whatever. So it's like those little things. And it's like one of those things that you have to like do it consistently and kind of build the habit. So I'm super happy to hear that you've been getting into that. That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I got back into it too, because it is something that's always been interesting and important to me, and something I was really focusing on when I was doing a lot more yoga and teaching a lot more yoga. But it was like just through, you know, different interactions and different things in the world pulling me in different directions, it was something that I let slide in favor of doing other things. And those other things don't bring the same thing that mindfulness does. So I'm glad that I reversed that.
Yeah, for sure. I completely agree. One thing I do want to ask you in terms of, because I know that you said you went through a period of time where you were like super fat phobic. Same. And I feel like everybody, everybody lives in America, right? Or the whole world, right?
Yeah.
And then like in this kind of keto space, right? There's a lot of especially women that go through this carb phobia, right? Like you go keto, you're like, oh, I'm never going to eat carbs again because I feel so good. Did you ever go like through that carb phobic kind of mentality?
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh yeah, big time. Yeah. There's like times where I would be like, you know what? I think I want to take like a keto break, but I don't even know how to eat normally. Like I can't fathom just eating regular carbs. You know what I mean? Like I was like, I have two speeds. I have full on keto or I have cheat meal pizza and there's no in between. And so it was like, I think the first day when we started Keto for Women, it was like the reset and it was like 180 grams of carbs. And it was like, oh, what? Where do you even find 180 grams of carbs? So definitely, I think I'm doing better with it. And I've actually been, after that, incorporating a lot more potatoes and squash and things like that into my diet, even when I'm on like a regular keto day versus like a refeed day. And I find that that's okay for me, but yeah, still like on a refeed day, I'm like, unless I'm having like a really big cheat meal, it's still like closer to like 100 grams of carbs instead of going way up, because I just don't feel that good when I eat more than that. But yeah, definitely, it's like I don't even. How do you find that many carbs in regular food?
Yeah, like in Whole Foods, everybody says that, and it's so true.
Whole food.
It's hard.
Yeah, like if you're eating all whole foods, like you're automatically going to be on a lower carb diet, I think. And that's like, I tell, like, obviously that all the girls in my little baby accountability group, they're not all keto. And I'm like, you don't have to do the same diet that I'm doing. That diet works for me and you guys have to do whatever you can stick to. But I do recommend like lowering your carbs, but don't focus on it. Just eat real whole foods and you'll automatically lower them.
Yeah, exactly. And feel better and get nutrients at the same time and all of that.
Yeah. It's like all of the things.
Yeah. Do you feel like, going, because we had, structured carb ups and carb refeeds throughout the program. Do you feel like you were able to implement those? And like, I'm just curious, like towards the end of I know we talked about this a little bit, but towards the end of the program, like, do you feel like you had a better kind of understanding of how your body reacted to that? Because I know you mentioned like you might not feel as good with super high carbs, and maybe like those 100 carbs is enough for you. And that's something that I always like to, reiterate, that everybody is different. Like something that makes me feel good might not make you feel good. So is that something that you kind of learned or like you found?
Yeah, I definitely had to play with it, because like at one point, I think the refeed days were prescribed for like 2 days per week, and they were both like 180. And I don't know if you remember, I had messaged you and I'm like, I don't think this is working for me. And you're like, okay, just do 1 day.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay. And then it was like, well, actually I still feel pretty good when it's a little bit lower. So
yeah. Yeah. And it's all just like, I always say this too, like it's all an experiment, and like you have to find, what works for you, but also realizing that like having, the guidance and then also like other tools kind of in the toolbox. I always say that. So one of the other things that we implement throughout the program was the PSMF day, which stands for, if listeners don't know what that is, a protein sparing modified fast day, which is basically a day where the basics of it is you consume your body weight in protein and then fill in the rest with carbs and fats to hit around 1,000 calories. That's like the basic. You can go into math and do all this other stuff. But that's really just how I describe it. So did you, was that the first time that you've ever done one of those? And what did you kind of take away from that?
Yeah, I had never heard of that before, and it was definitely the first time I had done it, but I found that I liked it so much. Um, I liked really how it made me feel. I liked how, like, I just kind of figured out like one meal that I really liked and just used that for my lunch and my dinner for the PSMF days every single week.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just made meal prep that much easier for me, because it was like, well, we're doing this and we're doing it every week and it's done. And I don't have to think about it and I don't have to plan that part out. And to the point where when we were starting to do the carb up days, I would actually do 2 of the PSMF days.
I remember that.
Just because I preferred to do it before and after. And I still use that now as a way to calorie cycle too. If I do like a day where, we're having a big event and we're having friends or we're going to socialize and we're going to live life, then maybe the next day, maybe the next 2 days, I'll do a PSMF so that my calories for the week level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I love that. And that's exactly kind of, implementing all these tools throughout the program. The whole point of the 3 months is like to give you these tools to be able to use for the rest of your life. And some people listening might think like, oh, well, if you have, you have in an event or something on the weekend and then you do a fast the next day, that's just, you're restricting yourself or you're trying to make up for that, maybe higher calorie day you had. But if you look at it in the way where you go into it with a plan, like if you go into the weekend saying, okay, I know Saturday I'm going to have, I'm going to go out to dinner and enjoy myself and have more calories than I usually would, but I still want to stay within my goals. So Sunday I'm going to plan to do a PSMF day. It's not that you're, you get to Sunday and you feel guilty, right? That's the whole point, is to not feel guilty, right? And to be able to live your life and implement these tools so that you can live your life and not feel restricted, but also still, be cognizant of what your personal goals are and your kind of limitations within that as well. So I think that's something too that, some people, and I'm sure if I was listening to this a few years ago, I'd be like, oh, well, you're just trying to like, not you, I'm just saying that in general, like the whole
Sure.
concept is trying to kind of make up for that bad day, and it turns into the whole yo-yoing and stuff like that. But the point behind this is to realize that if you go into it with a plan and it's like something that you planned out, then that's where kind of the money is. Like you have this plan, so you go into it knowing what you're doing and you don't feel guilty after, because okay, this is the plan, this is what I'm doing, I'm going to execute on it and still, hit my goals. So I wanted to just reiterate that, because I know some people listening might think of it a different way. So yeah, so is there anything else, maybe like, I guess, so you were in the first round, which ended back in December. So it's been, I can't do math anymore. It's been six months?
6-ish months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Cause we ended right after Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Is there anything kind of, over these last 6 months that you said you still implement the PSMF days? Is there anything else that you kind of had taken away, that you still implement, or that's been working for you?
Definitely still working on the step count. In fact, I had actually gotten really bad and lax on my steps, and then we did the 10K step challenge, and I was like, oh, you know what? This is really good, and we're at a really good time to kind of keep up with it, because there's no other gyms open and there's nothing else to do. So I had intended to keep doing it, because I think, what did we do it for 10 days or something?
Yeah, it was like,
and then,
if people who are listening, so in the Metflex tribe, we have challenges and things like that. And so one of the challenges was, I believe it was a 10K challenge. I think we did it for like a week. It was like 7 days or something. And whoever had the most steps at the end, like, won the challenge.
Yeah, I think it's like 7 or 10 days. And I was like, you know what? I did it for 10 days, or I'm going to keep doing it. And then we hit a rainy season, and it was like, okay, well, it's a lot harder to get steps when it's pouring rain in Virginia. But then actually, I don't know why I didn't think of it sooner, but then I realized that I live right next door to a parking garage that's attached to a gym that's not open. So now on like rainy days, I just go and like walk or loops in the parking garage.
Oh,
And it's
wow.
a small parking garage. There's only 2 floors, but yeah, I mean, it was like, it's not beautiful. It doesn't smell great, but get my 10,000 steps in. So I give myself a little bit of like leniency if it's like extra rainy or something. I'll say like, okay, the goal for today is like 7,500 to 8,000. But then if it's a beautiful, beautiful day and I'm not doing another workout, like definitely get to the 10K. So that's working. The mindset stuff is still really important to me. I'm still doing all the tracking. So basically everything that you taught us in Keto for Women is like, I'm still doing.
That's awesome.
The carb up days are probably not as healthy because they actually just end up being like life days where, you know, things are happening and my calories are super high and my carbs are super high, but they're not meant to be that way.
Yeah. I got what you're saying.
So, I think, yeah.
That's awesome. So one thing I want to talk about too is like the tracking part of things, because that's obviously something that we implement a lot in the program, is tracking. And the whole basis behind like, you know, your tracker with not just your macros and food, but like all the biofeedback metrics and your steps and things like that. Like for anybody listening, the whole point of all of these things, it's not to like, you know, make you be tracking all these little things and like being super specific with them. The whole point is just being aware, right? And I think I talk about this a lot. It's like, you know, awareness for me, especially like just my own personal opinion, like when I'm aware of all these things, it gives me freedom. Because if I'm not aware, then that's what stresses me out, because I'm like, I don't know. If I'm not paying attention to how many steps I got today, then I don't know like how much I moved. Like I don't have any gauge of that. If I'm not, you know, measuring, like what's the saying, like if what doesn't get measured doesn't get managed, right? And it's the same with like food intake and things like that. And so I think that's super important. And a lot of people ask me like, do I have to track for the rest of my life? And, you know, it depends, right? It depends on what your goals are. It depends on how it helps you in your own life. But if it keeps you aware and things like that, then I think that it's super important. So do you feel like that's like one of the biggest things, like the awareness piece of it?
Yeah, I definitely have a much greater awareness of everything that's going on. And like I said, like now that I know how different things affect me, like having a tracker of it, I can predict what's going to happen. And then I can, you know, make a plan to adjust that. And I think like, I remember, I think it might've been after we were doing Netflix, but one of the girls, Erica, was reading something and she posted it, and it was something to the effect of like, there's 2 types of people in the world: people who can live in moderation and those who cannot. And so like, I think that this program has really shown me that I am not somebody who can live in moderation. I have to do everything 100%. Like I can't stop at one cookie. I can't, you know, I can't track just a little bit. I have to do all of it for my own sanity, but also just because if I'm not doing it, it's going to play tricks on my brain. Like if I'm having a day where I eat a bunch of stuff and I don't track it, and then I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I ate all of that. But then I'll later put it in the tracker just because I can't help myself. And then it's like, oh, I was stressed out about nothing. I'm actually still in my macros. You know, I'm still under my calories for the week or whatever.
Yeah. No, that's a great example. That's a great example. I feel like I'm kind of the same way too. Like I feel like I've gotten better with the moderation piece of things, just because the more you like implement these habits and become more aware, it always comes back to awareness, like the easier it is to see like how things make you feel and stuff like that. So I don't know. I think that is something definitely that I know a lot of people struggle with. But over time, like I think that, again, just the more aware you are and the more you kind of track these things, the easier it gets to kind of gauge where you're at and how they affect you and things like that. So I completely agree with all of that. So I guess kind of to wrap things up, what would be like, if there was someone who was kind of in your position, you know, maybe they, like we talked about, they went keto and then they kind of took a break and then they went back and they're not seeing the results that they wanted to see. Do you have any like tips or advice or anything at all? I mean, it doesn't have to be specific to that period of time, but just any advice that you've learned throughout maybe the last 2 or 3 years that you would want to give someone who might be in your position?
I think the most important thing is like, just like a girlfriend of mine, she is always saying like, don't let perfection be the enemy of good. Like, and I think we talk about it a lot in the Keto for Women too, where it's like consistency over perfection is always going to yield better results. And I think that's the key. And like, really, you can't be super consistent unless you're tracking. So I think that's important. But it's also, I think, really important just to be kind to yourself and not beat yourself up when you have a bad day, or not start to think that it's impossible. Like, that positivity is going to be vital as well.
I love it. I love it. Completely agree. I mean, it's life, right? Stuff happens.
Yeah.
We're living in the real world. And that's something that I like, really one of the main things why I really started this podcast and really, started the MetFlex tribe, and the whole, idea behind metabolic flexibility is like, the more you teach your body to be flexible and resilient, the easier you can bounce back, from either a rough day or, whatever it may be. And just also realizing that like, we live in this modern world, and this like, there's going to be days and times when I'm going to have a slice of pizza and I don't want to feel like, maybe it makes me not feel so great the next day, but sure. I don't want to feel so guilty where I'm like beating myself up for weeks on end because I had a slice of pizza. Yeah. Like that's kind of the goal, is to really just, again, become more aware. I can't say that enough. And implement strategies where you can, be strategic about what you're doing, and know that like, it's not the end of the world, and you can bounce right back. And exactly what you said, like, you don't have to be perfect all the time, as long as you're being consistent and implementing the habits and being educated behind these things, and not just, trying to kind of go along with it, but also realizing like, okay, I know the why behind the what. And so that is what's going to allow me to, continue this forever and implement these things forever. So I think that's just like, you hit on all of that today. So I'm super thankful that you were able to come on and kind of share your story. Is there anything else you want to share or leave our listeners with at all?
I don't know. I've been thinking about that question. I'm like, I don't think that there's going to be anything else I have to add. I feel like we went pretty deep.
Yeah, we covered a lot of stuff. But yeah, all right. Well, thank you so much for chatting with me, and I'm super excited to continue to have you in the tribe. And also, the recipe book is going to be, I just got a notification before we started that it's going to be done soon, so that'll be up there. And so you'll obviously see that. And yeah, we'll have some more challenges coming up in the next, hopefully, week or so, for the mindset challenge that we're going to organize. So that'll be fun. Still figuring out details, but I'll be in touch in the group. All right, awesome. So thank you so much for coming on, and I'm excited for everybody to listen to this interview.
All right, thanks for having me. It was wonderful chatting with you.
All right, I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
All right, thanks for listening to that episode with Rachel Bush. I hope you enjoyed hearing her story and her journey, and took away some, relevant information, especially if you may be struggling with some of the same things that she was struggling with. Definitely make sure that you check out the Keto For Women program. Again, I will be launching that end of August, beginning of September 2020. We are in, 2020. Very interesting year so far. But anyway, if you're interested, I will link the link to sign up for the waiting list in the show notes. Or again, you can go to my website and check that out, killinitketo.com. /Keto For Women, or just go to my homepage and you'll see the nutrition and exercise programs on my homepage. Click that and you probably can't miss it. It'll be one of the top programs, Keto For Women. And yeah, that's all I got for you today. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to share it with someone who you think might benefit from it, or you share it on social media so that I can thank you for listening. You can tag me on my Instagram at rachelgregory.cns. And if you have any questions about the Keto For Women program or any other programs, always feel free to reach out. And also just to note that there are limited spots available for the Keto For Women program. So definitely get on the waiting list if you're interested in joining this round. I will probably not be having another round until 2021. So I usually do about 2 rounds per year for the Keto For Women program, just because it is a very intense 3 months. So if you're interested, definitely get on the waiting list for this upcoming round. And yeah, that's all I got for you. I'll talk to you next time.